the liberty of doing a Mentimeter poll. So I hope we're not new to Mentimeter, but it's really, really simple. All you need to do is to whip out your phone, go to the browser, and just type in menti.com, menti.com, and then just key in the code 756188. Okay, so it can take just a while to do that. And so the first question here is, what stresses do you observe at the workplace? So I've listed a few, and you can choose more than one option, right? So this is entirely anonymous polling, and I encourage you to contribute over here. Just for my curiosity, what kind of stresses do you observe at the workplace? Wow, thank you. Wow, that's a lot from one person. Okay. All right. So let's see which kind of stress comes up top for now. You can pick more than one. If you notice all of them, you can, of course, choose all of them. Okay. Conflicts with coworkers, fear of the future comes in tops. All right. Okay. Burning out, unfocused and unproductive, unengaged at work. All right. Some people are feeling overwhelmed. There's a loss of motivation, fixed on negative mindsets, reactive behaviors. Great. Okay. All right. Awesome. This is wonderful. Thank you for participating in this. So the tops over here we can see right now, it's conflicts with coworkers. Okay. This is quite common. All these are common stresses, right? Burning out, right? Nowadays, there's this new term called the Zoom burnout, and it's very ironic that we're in Zoom now. I have heard of people telling me during these webinars that, you know, this is my 7th Zoom session of the day, and they essentially have these Zoom sessions back to back the whole day, and they're feeling very, very burnt out from it. Yeah. Okay. Fear of the future. Yes. Okay, thank you. Keep the polling coming. If you'd like to add on, I think you can too as well. All right, so I'll have further questions following this. Okay, let's come back to the slides. So whatever stresses that you're noticing at the workplace now, know that, you know, regardless of which organization that you're in, which industry, stress is stress, right? So there are unique stresses to each industry, but when it comes to receiving this stress, later I'll explain in a while, we can find common grounds in how we are reacting to all these stresses and what we are currently suffering from. Okay. And so, you know, throughout this session, I'd like to invite you to also think about mindfulness, not really about what mindfulness is. I'm not going to give you like a textbook definition of mindfulness, but I'd like to invite you to reflect on how mindfulness could potentially help you and your coworkers and your colleagues at the workplace. Okay. All right. So let's start off by looking at why mindfulness. So this answers a lot to the question of why you're here today, right? You're trying to find out what mindfulness could do for you and could do for your workplace. So I've taken the liberty of just mapping out some of the key research outcomes that are out there. And there is just so much research being done right now about mindfulness. So I'm not able to put everything here, but I've put the more popular outcomes here that are more applicable to the workplace, right? So you can take a scan of it and just to see what are some of the keywords that resonate with you or with your current organizational culture or your workplace, right? So there are some buzzwords over here, right? Things like resilience. We're all talking about resilience now with all the changes, the challenges that we're facing with. I'm going to talk a little bit about anxiety and depression later because mental health at the workplace is a hot topic right now, right? Especially with the COVID-19 situation. A lot of us are very, very stressed. Just now during the poll, some of you observed fear of the future or fear of uncertainty, right? So this can invite a lot of anxiety, a lot of depressive symptoms. So how could we help our colleagues at the workplace? Right? Boost positive mood. So even though mindfulness is really not about positive thinking, but positive moods is one of the outcomes of practicing mindfulness, right? So people who practice mindfulness more often, they sort of activate the left side of the brain. And this will help to increase the positive moods or positive emotions that one experiences, Okay, and of course, mastery of emotions. We know that when we get very stressed, when we have fear, you know, sometimes we get swept away by all these emotions, and we tend to, you know, break down, which I used to do a lot before mindfulness. So mindfulness can actually help us to be a master of our emotions. So this means we become better at regulating our emotions. Better focus. All right, so this one is quite a biggie because a lot of people come to tell me that you know, my staff are not, they're very distracted, they're not productive. So how do I make them focus better? Later on, you will see that mindfulness is not all about focusing, but it is a research outcome. So when you practice mindfulness, you are able to focus better. And we know that when we have good focus, good attention, it really changes the way that we work and you know, how productive or how effective we are. Okay. And let's talk about better decision making. So this one will be interesting, I think not just for leaders, but also for all employees, because we all make decisions on a daily basis, big and small, right? So leaders may make more macro decisions, and this has a very strong research result, because when we are mindful, we are able to take both macro and micro views, and we can be receptive of different perspectives better. So when this happens, we can actually see the big picture, and we are able to consider things from multiple perspectives, and hence we make better and wiser decisions, right? So this is particularly important for leaders as well, for the management. Improve the relationships. So just now you mentioned, you know, you voted for conflicts at the workplace, conflict with colleagues, and this is very common, especially when we are very stressed out, when things are so busy, we're not communicating effectively. And mindfulness can really help with that. We become better listeners when we practice mindfulness. We become better communicators, and hence, you know, if we are also able to take in other people's perspectives and not get stuck in our own, this can vastly improve our relationships at the workplace as well. Okay, let's jump to this one on the left, stronger immunity and better sleep. So you can see from here that mindfulness doesn't just only benefit the mind. It has a lot of positive effects on the body as well. So people who practice mindfulness regularly, we actually do have a boosted immune system. So this means that we fall sick less often. And even though we do fall sick, even when we do fall sick, we recover much, much faster. And I myself can attest to this, because when I was really stressed out in the corporate communications industry before, I was always falling sick, and I would take weeks to recover from a simple cold, right? So mindfulness has really changed this for me. And better sleep. How many of you here don't sleep very well? Generally, people in Singapore, people working in fast-paced societies, we generally don't get good sleep. Even if we can go to sleep, we don't have quality sleep. Okay, so mindfulness can help with that. And the last one over here is quite interesting. Mindfulness can help us have less self-destructive behaviors. So a lot of times when we meet with stress, we tend to not like how we feel about that stress. So we like to turn our attention away from that stress. We want to avoid that stress. And so we kind of channel our energy, we channel our attention to something else. And this something else may not be very constructive for us. So take, for example, I don't know if you felt this over this period of time when we're staying at home a lot, when you get tired and stressed, do you suddenly feel like eating a lot? And then you go to the fridge and you start raiding for food. I don't know, that could happen, right? So these behaviors, if they're not very helpful for us, they can become addictive as well. So case in point, a lot of us are using our phones a lot nowadays, and sometimes we very mindlessly just get glued to the phone, right? We don't want to feel stressed, so we just pick up our phone very habitually and start using it nonstop. Okay, some people may turn to other habits like going to the gym every day, which could be good, but if you're addicted to the gym, then that's not a very good thing. Alcohol, drinking alcohol all the time, we know that these may be destructive. So mindfulness can help with our behaviors as well. Okay, so just to name a few. All right, and I just wanted to show you some of the big names out here. Leaders out there, CEOs, founders, and famous people who actually practice and they swear by mindfulness and meditation. So you can see that people are practicing mindfulness and incorporating into not just for their personal well-being, but also to become better leaders out there in their own arenas, right? So you have famous CEOs, you have like the co-founder of Twitter, you have you know, the president or the CEOs of big organizations. You have CEO of LinkedIn here who practices mindfulness and meditation. You have celebrities. You have sports celebrities as well. Okay, so of course there are more and more organizations, MNCs out there that are gradually incorporating mindfulness into the workplace culture, into the organizational culture, right? So it's becoming popular and not for and for a good reason as well. Yeah. Okay, so enough talking, and I'd like to invite you to practice something with me. Okay, so this practice is really simple for a start. It's just called 1 minute of stillness. Okay, 1 minute of stillness. So I do this practice with 17-year-olds because I'm also a polytechnic lecturer here in Singapore. And every time I see these students, you know, I see them for the whole day. So they get really tired, they get so stressed, and they get restless. They throw tantrums at me, at one another. So it's really quite ugly. And, you know, it's not easy to study in Singapore as well. So what I do is before the start of each day that I see each class, I start off with this 1 minute of stillness. And it's very simple. I just tell them all you need to do is to sit back in a comfortable but wakeful posture. And we are not going to do anything else. We're just going to sit by ourselves for 1 minute in stillness and in silence. Okay, so I've done this with 17-year-olds. So let's see how all of you do this with me. Okay, so I hope you'll practice together with me. So I'm going to stop the screen share for a while so you can see me, but you don't actually have to see me, right? So when you're practicing, all you need to do is to have your eyes closed. If you're not comfortable with that, you can just lower your gaze down to the floor. So if you look at the screen, you may be distracted. So looking down at the floor, all right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this bell. There's nothing spiritual about this. It's just two things that make a sound. A sound that would signal the start of 1 minute and the end of 1 minute. So effectively, we're going to go into 60 seconds of stillness. All right, so remember, no multitasking. We're not doing anything. We're just simply being still and silent. Okay, so now when you're ready, you can sit down for this practice. So just sitting back in your chair, but just ensuring that you don't take this chance to nap. I know it's close to dinner time. You're probably tired from a whole day of work, but please use this as a chance to practice. Okay, so you may want to sit up straight and tall as well. Closing your eyes or lowering your gaze down to the floor and allowing the sound of the bell to let you know the start and end of this 1 minute of stillness. Okay, so I'd like to invite you to open your eyes again or widen your eyes, looking back at the screen. All right, so that was 1 minute. That was 1 minute. So I'd like to invite you to reflect a little bit about how this experience was for you, right? 60 seconds of stillness. When I first tried this with every new class that I teach at the Polytechnic, the 17-year-olds they feel really awkward about this. So, you know, I would do this practice with them and then I would be practicing together with them. So my eyes are closed, but my ears are wide open so I can hear everything that's going on in the classroom. And for a start, the students are always very awkward about this. They would be, you know, they would still continue typing on their laptop or using their phones. Some of them would be whispering to each other because they're so not used to not doing anything. They have to do something, right? Or, they would be giggling with one another because they find it so strange. Some of them, they would just continue to eat their breakfast in front of me, like eat their chicken rice or laksa or fried chicken or whatever. And, and I don't stop them. I let them do whatever that they want. And it takes about maybe 3 or 4 times for each class to sort of ease into this practice. And afterwards, they really do come to me with feedback, and they would tell me, oh, Miss Lee, I find this 1 minute of stillness to be so helpful. It helps me to get through the rest of the day a lot better. I feel so much calmer for the rest of the day. So I don't even tell them that it's a mindfulness practice. I just get them to be still for 1 minute, which is so precious nowadays. We don't really get the chance to just be still and do nothing, right? And if the students were able to benefit or feel the benefits just from 1 minute of practice, can you imagine if we were to extend this practice to 2 minutes, 5 minutes, practice more regularly? How might we benefit from this? Okay. All right, so let me come back to the share screen. Okay, so you've done 1 minute of stillness or 60 seconds of stillness. So I have a key question for us to reflect on, and you don't have to share about this yet, okay? But I'd like for us to reflect on this definitely. So the key question here that I'd like to ask you is, this was a practice of stillness. So in that 60 seconds, were you still? Were you still? Okay, so think about it. If you want to, feel free to type into the chat. You can type yes, you can type no to let me know. All right. Were you still? Were you fidgety? Yeah. Samuel, thank you. You were still. Okay. And someone raised your hand as well, I see. Yeah. Yes, Geraldine. Physical, yes. Mental, no. That's interesting, Linda. Yes, but become more relaxed. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Vivian, for raising your hand. So those who raised hand, I assume you were still, right? Kind of like a meditation. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Great. So keep your thoughts coming in. I'm very curious about them. And you're absolutely right. So your experience is your experience, all right? If you felt that you were still, there's no right or wrong with this. If you felt that you were not still, also no right or wrong. But my question here is, if you felt that you were still, how did you know that you were still? If you felt that you were not still, how did you know that you were not still? Okay? Simon, you fell asleep. Okay? Yes, drowsiness. So this gives us a good idea of how tired the mind can be, right? We just 1 minute and we can just easily doze off. It shows how exhausted we were, right? Okay? Yeah, so a lot of us felt, our body was mostly still, but, there were some movements here or there. Yes, okay. Mind is relaxed, thinking nothing. Great, thank you. That's great. Now, some of you said that your mind was not still. So how did you know that your mind was not still? So as adults, maybe you have the discipline to keep your body still for 1 minute. But what about the mind? Was your mind still? So for Samuel, your mind is relaxing, thinking nothing. Okay, that was your experience. And I think it was Linda. Linda, you said your mind was not still. So physically you were still, but your mind was not still. So how did you know your mind was not still? What was happening in the mind? Okay, almost open your eyes at the final bell. Not still, can hear my surroundings. Okay, so you were aware of sounds in your surroundings. Linda, you were thinking of something. Doria, you were visualizing yourself, right? Borderless grassland with wind. That is really nice. That is really nice. Okay, yeah. So one way or another, something is happening in the mind. Something is happening in the mind. Yeah, thoughts are coming in. Body may be still, but thoughts are coming in. How many of you had random thoughts coming in? I can tell a few of you already have them, right? Some of you may have been thinking about, what else have I not done for the rest of the day? Have I sent out that email? Have I not? Yep. So for those of you who raised your hand, you may have felt thoughts. You may have noticed thoughts coming in. Okay. Yes. So this is exactly the experience that we all have. There's nothing wrong with this. If you had thoughts coming in, it doesn't mean that you have failed mindfulness. But just 60 seconds of experience, you're just able to get a glimpse of what your internal state of mind is like. It's never It's never ending. It is a never ending stream of thoughts. It's always busy all the time. Okay, so think about if our mind is so busy all the time, what do you think happens when we're sleeping at night? Your body may be exhausted and very still, lying on the bed, but what about your mind? Right? Do you have dreams? Are you processing things even as you sleep? Okay, what is this doing for our well-being in general? Okay, so some things to think about. Okay, so I have a question for you. Moving on to the coming topic here. How many times do you think you pick up your phone every day? So I'm going to do a Mentimeter with you so that we can contribute and we can see everyone's response. All right. So I'm going to go to the next slide here. Okay, so you can just go back to the same Menti page on your browser and just type in a gauge, a number. How many times do you think you pick up your phone every day? No right or wrong. Just follow your instincts and tell me. More than 50? Okay. Maybe more than 50? 20. Okay. 20. Wow. Lost count. 100 times, frequently, more than 50. More than 10 times? 50, more than 30 times? Okay. Any more? More than 20. Okay. Well, I would say that this audience is quite conservative. Every 15 minutes. Countless. Yeah. Lost count, countless. 50, 50. Great. More than 30 times. Okay. So we have a variety here, right? It's actually not difficult to track this. There are some apps out there that allow you to do that. How many times do you pick up your phone? So if you're curious, you can do that. All right, thank you. Yes, so keep the contributions coming so that we can see all the responses later. Okay, thank you. Let's come back to the slides. All right, so of course this is just a gauge, but there are several research studies being done out there about how many times we pick up our phones every day. I don't know if there are any millennials present today. Millennials. You're born in the 80s and after, you're called a millennial. The study done on millennials showed that millennials on average pick up their phones or check their phones an average of 150 times a day. This is for millennials, okay? I don't know about the rest of you. So 150 may be quite scary. I'm going to show you less scary statistics. Now, this one was done on a general audience, okay? So on average, we pick up our phones 58 times a day, okay? 58 times. This was from another study by Rescue Time, okay? And we lose at least 37.5 minutes of working time per day to just picking up our phones. And half of all phone pickups happen within 3 minutes of a previous one. All right. So now, if you look at these numbers over here, they may not seem scary. All right. 58 is not a scary number. 37.5, that's like a little more than half an hour. I think I can afford half an hour every day to look at my phone. It's not a big deal. Okay. But the truth is not like that. Okay. So when you look at reality, let's look at this bar over here. Okay, now if all 37.5 minutes happened all at once with your mobile use, it looks like that. But this is not reality. The reality is that we receive a ping on our phone or a vibration on our phone maybe every few minutes within 3 minutes of the previous one. So each time we pick up the phone, our attention shifts away from the task that we're doing back to the phone, right? And then when we're ready to put down the phone, it takes some effort to focus back on the task. So this shifting of attention between the task and your phone can cost energy, it costs attention, and it costs our productivity by 40%. So this is quite scary, right? Just the picking up of our phone can affect our productivity so much. And we are wondering why, we seem more distracted and less productive than before, okay? So the key question here today I have for you is, when we talk about mindfulness, we talk about attention a lot. So is your attention where it should be? I sometimes get people, professionals telling me, or HR coming to tell me, they find that, it's very hard for us to focus anymore, focus on doing deep work, right? So we can't stay at a task and just concentrate on that because we're so distracted, the attention gets fragmented all the time. Yeah. Kelvin, how does this affect or cause dementia or less cognitive connection? Attention definitely plays a part in cognition in dementia as well. And dementia is complicated. So it has to do, of course, with not only attention, but also memory and the degeneration of the brain. Okay, so it does, and research does show that practicing mindfulness and meditation can prevent early degeneration of the brain. So essentially, it is delaying dementia. So there's quite a lot of studies being done on this right now. Okay, thank you for asking. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to cover the opposite of mindfulness now. So, I'm not going to just give you like a textbook definition of mindfulness. Let's reflect on the opposite of mindfulness. So when we are not mindful, we are considered mindless. Some people call it absent-mindedness. Some people call autopilot. Okay, so I'm going to show you 3 kinds of mindlessness, and you're going to let me know, or you can just think about it on your own, whether this has happened to you at all today, just today. Okay, how many times has each of these happened to you? So the first kind of mindlessness is exclusive attention on a single object. Okay, what does this mean? If you take public transport, let's say MRT, and you're walking out of the station and you're in a hurry to get to work, have you ever met people like that? They are walking in front of you and they're checking their phone. Their attention is so much on the phone that they slow down their pace of walking and they cause a jam behind you. And they have no idea what's happening because they are so focused, 100% focused on their phone, right? So this is having an exclusive attention on a single object such that you cancel out everything around you. And this is very dangerous. A lot of parents come to me and they ask me, Erin, can you help my kid focus better in class with mindfulness? He's so distracted all the time. So we tend to think, mindfulness equals to focus, and focus is a good thing. But what happens when we are 100% focused on something and we cancel everything out around us? We can't hear people calling out to us. Imagine if you're crossing the road and you're glued to your phone 100%. You don't see traffic coming. You don't hear traffic coming. Okay, so this can be very dangerous. It is not good for well-being. It is considered a kind of mindlessness. Okay. Second kind of mindlessness, has this happened to you before? Maybe, just during this session today, this webinar today, we have had about half an hour of it already. Have you had experiences of low level of attention? You're zoning out, your mind wandering. Now, this happens a lot with meetings, right? Especially with so many Zoom meetings that are going on. Not everything you can be bothered with, or not everything really concerns you, but you have to be there physically. And, you find your mind wandering off. You're thinking about a holiday somewhere, or you're wondering about some work out there. And you just suddenly lost track of what the meeting was about when you come back. Okay? Yeah? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Calvin. That's very nice of you. Thank you. Okay, so this is a kind of mindlessness. All right, so have you had that today? The third kind is distractions. Now, distractions is a little bit different from mind wandering. Mind wandering can be seen sometimes as, it's relatively relaxing for us, right? We can think about very pleasant things. We're just lost in thoughts, lost in just wonderment. But then distractions are a little bit harsher on us. Our attention really gets pulled away, and sometimes it can get stuck there. So we get preoccupied with thoughts, especially negative thoughts. And sometimes, we're just so caught up in that thinking mode that, something bad happens to us and we just keep replaying that like a bad movie over and over again. Sometimes even when we sleep at night, we just lie in bed and we're just thinking nonstop, and we can't sleep. Okay? So distractions are a form of mindlessness. Okay, scary stats time. How much of the time do our minds wander off? The stats from Harvard says 46.9%. And I always joke with working professionals when they come for my class. Can you imagine if your 13th month bonus is based on how attentive you are at work? How much of a cut will you get? Right? 46.9%, that's close to 50%, and that's scary. This is one of the outcomes of the Harvard study. A wandering mind is not a happy mind. So this is quite interesting. I'll explain a little bit later. Okay? What about the younger people, millennials, Gen Zs? This is research by Udemy. 74% of millennials and Gen Zs report that they are distracted at work, which is not surprising. What's really surprising is 41% of them say that they are stressed because of the distractions. 46% of them say they feel unmotivated because they're distracted. So what is, for example, technology is supposed to be here to help us, to aid us to be more productive. Why is it making us be less productive and be so distracted, fragmented all the time? Okay, so we need to rethink a little bit about our lifestyle and how we could shift that a little. Okay, so talking about distractions, where is your attention when you are distracted? Right, so think about just now during that 1 minute of stillness. If you were distracted even just in one moment, one of the moments you were distracted, where was your attention? Presenting this timeline to us, is it in the past? Was your attention in the past, in the present, in the future? Okay, think about it. If let's say your eyes were closed and you notice, some neighbor's kid screaming outside, where's your attention? You hear sounds. So your attention is in the present, right? You can be distracted in the present as well. If you were thinking about something that happened with work today, this morning, right? Your attention was in the past. If you're wondering, you were counting down, oh, when is 60 seconds going to be up, and you try to guess the ending, when I will ring the bell, you're thinking about what else you haven't done for the rest of the day or what you're going to cook for dinner today, then your attention is in the future. Okay, so our attention just drifts back and forth like that all the time. It's very normal, nothing wrong with this. But what can invite trouble is when we get stuck in either the past or the future, and sometimes in the present as well, okay? Present is a little complicated, so I'm going to explain the past and the future. So something bad happens to you, and you can't stop thinking about it, you're obsessing about it. How could he do this? How could she always do this to me? Why me? Right? And we can get stuck in that. This is called rumination. We think nonstop, and it's very easy for us to get depressive symptoms when we are stuck in the past. When we are stuck in the future, it starts with a single thought of concern, and then we start to worry more and more. We think about the worst case scenarios, we lose sleep, we feel anxious, worse still, we get panic attacks. That's when we get stuck in the future, okay? So what is really dangerous is when we get stuck and we don't have the skills to bring ourselves back to the present moment, okay? So what is mindfulness? So here's a really simple way of understanding what mindfulness is. Past, present, future. Maybe you've heard of this before. Mindfulness is being in the present. What does this mean? Does this mean that you don't have to think about the past? You don't have to think about the future? Just be present, just be happy? Or the youngsters are saying YOLO nowadays. Is YOLO mindfulness? It is not, okay? Mindfulness is really a training of our attention. It is an attentional flexibility. First of all, do you know where your attention is? Second of all, do you know if it's stuck in the past or the future? Third, if it's stuck in the past or in the future, do you have the skill to bring yourself back to the present moment as and when you need to? Okay, so mindfulness is really a kind of attentional flexibility. It's all about where your attention is. Are you able to shift your attention the way you want it to? Right? Okay. Let's talk a little bit about stress now. Stress is very up my alley because I was a highly stressed person, and I'm sure that there are many of us here who are like that as well, or who are experiencing stress. And I talked about burnout just now. So do we know the difference between stress and burnout? So usually we would see, burnout as sort of like an accumulation of stress, right? But fundamentally, there are differences. So if you look at engagement level, usually when we are stressed, we are in an over-engaged mode because we want to complete this deadline, we want to rush for this deadline, achieve this, achieve that, okay? And when you get to the burnout stage, suddenly you get disengaged. There's a disengagement. In terms of emotions, stress is a very reactive state because, you're probably in a very hectic state all the time. But then when it gets to burnout, when everything fizzles out, your emotions sort of get blunted and it sort of feels like you can't feel anything. You feel a little bit numb or maybe even empty. Okay, a lot of times when we are in a depressed mode, our emotions are very much blunted as well. Yeah. Stress is a sense of urgency because there are deadlines, for example. And then when you get to burnout, it becomes a sense of helplessness. You're helpless. You don't know what to do anymore, right? So in terms of energy, stress can really drain us of our energy. It's, physically, it's very tiring for us. But then when you get to the burnout state, you lose motivation. Suddenly, you just don't want to care about anything anymore. You just want to put everything aside. You want to run away, okay? Very classic of burnout. And also, it's very emotionally tolling. It drains you of your emotions, right? So there's some difference here. And what's really important is knowing where you are. So I'm going to present the Yerkes-Dodson curve to you. And this is a very popular curve to show the relationship between our stress and performance. So maybe you can try to map this to yourself or to the colleagues whom you observe around you, right? Your teammates. Where are you at any moment? So if you look at the relationship between stress and performance, stress doesn't have to be a bad thing. Stress can be a very good thing. Let's look at the green one, okay? So when we don't have stress or when we have very, very little stress, we actually feel bored. We feel unchallenged. And this happens, when you're not given enough work or you're not using your skills effectively in the workplace, and it affects your performance as well, right? Because you're not at your optimal level. But then when stress levels go up, you get to the yellow stage where this is where we call the optimum stress. So I don't know if you have felt this before sometimes, but you feel like everything just flows. You're just very motivated. You love your work. You're very focused. You're in the flow, right? As you climb to the top of the peak, you will reach a point where it's your peak performance. Everything is going so well. You're just achieving, right? But as with every mountain peak, when you cross that peak, you have to come down, okay? So if stress levels continue, we're going to come down this slope now, and we're going to enter an overloaded stage. This is a state of fatigue, exhaustion. The body feels really tired. We're not getting enough sleep, not eating well, etc. And if we're not careful, it's really easy for us to slip into the red one. Okay, the red one, you can see it's more emotional here. You get anxious, you get angry. Why is this happening to me? You panic, you get panic attacks, you burn out, you break down. Okay, so this is a disease. Burnout is classified as a disease by WHO, by the way. Okay, so the key thing here is when we talk about mindfulness, we are really talking about, first of all, awareness. Do you know where you are? What I was experiencing before when I was doing corporate work was that I never knew when I was falling into the orange and red zone. And it's always too late. When I notice I'm stressed, I'm already in the red zone. And I'm already totally burnt out. I've quit my job. That's it. All right? So this is not healthy, of course. So we need to ask ourselves, am I falling into the orange zone? And if I am, do I know it? All right? And what can I do to prevent myself from going further down the slope over here? All right? So this is what mindfulness can do for us, because we have awareness and we have the skill to regulate ourselves. Okay, so let's do another poll here, and this can be quite interesting. Think about a time when you were very, very stressed. Like really, really stressed. Like you want to really pull out your hair and everything. Okay? My question is, does your body feel stressed? Does your body feel stressed? Okay, so I'm going to go back to Mentimeter, and you're going to tell me which parts of the body do you most feel stressed, and what kind of sensations do you feel in the body parts, right? Okay, so please go back to Menti. And please just type in keywords. No need to type in full sentences. Okay, just let me know the body part and what's happening at the body part. So, for example, your eyes. What happens with your eyes? What do you feel at your eyes? Okay, the head. The head feels stressed. I can resonate with this, but what happens in the head? You get a headache, right? Let's go into even more specifics. What kind of headache is it? Which part of the head is aching? Fast breathing, yes. Yep, back of the head. Foot feels like it's pulling downwards to the ground. Interesting, okay? Migraine, heart pain. Wow, heart pain. Eye tingling, interesting, okay? Shoulders feel heavy, stiff sensations. right? Body feels lighter, interesting. Okay. Tightness across my upper shoulders. Yes, that's right. Anyone else? Fingers numbing, interesting. Heartburn, yep. Yep, the heart gets a lot of stress, definitely. Head, heart, body. Very good. The back of the head, yep. Tightness in the chest, very good. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Please keep the contributions coming. All right. Yes, so we can see that we can't really escape this, right? When we are stressed, essentially not just the mind is stressed, the body gets it real time. And this is why we fall sick when we're under stress. So we're not new to this. We're not new to this. But the key thing is, what are we doing about it? How can mindfulness help with this? All right. Thank you. Okay, I just want to do a little bit of experiment with you. I'm going to tell you a story and just notice what comes up for you as you look at these keywords. Okay, so we start with a statement. John was on his way to work. Okay, the next sentence. He was worried about the sales report. Right? Next sentence. He didn't think he could control the board of directors today. What do we think about John now? Last statement. After all, it's not part of the intern scope. Okay, end of story, right? So the way I presented this line by line, if you were able to follow your thought process, you may have noticed that with each statement that was flashed to you, some thoughts came in, some evaluations came in about what kind of person John is, right? And this is essentially what we do. Before we get all the information that we need, we tend to put a lot of meaning, a lot of interpretations behind everything that we see. And this is how the brain works. It's working like that all the time. And sometimes the thought process can get us into trouble as well, right? So usually at the end, when we receive all the information and then we realize, oh, things are actually not what we think they are. So this happens a lot in the workplace too. So I'd like to explain a little bit to you about the art of paying attention in mindfulness. How do we practice it? So essentially, you can envision, you can imagine like mindfulness, your attention is like a torchlight. You're shining a torchlight on something, okay? If you're able to play with the spotlight, you realize that if you move a spotlight close to a wall, the spotlight kind of gets sharper and smaller. If you pull the torch away, the spotlight gets diffused and larger. Okay, so our attention can be like that. It is very flexible. Okay, so now when we undergo stress, what happens to our attention in the brain is that it narrows. It becomes very narrow and very concentrated and very sharp, and all it pays attention to is that stress. So when we are stressed, when we have thoughts, for example, in us, we're just going to keep obsessing about that thought because the attention is narrowed down. So this is why when we get stressed, we turn very neurotic. We keep repeating that same thought in ourselves, looping the same thought over and over again in us. He's out to get me. Why me? I'll never make it. Okay? Now, with mindfulness, when we practice becoming aware of ourselves, if you're aware of your thinking, you're no longer lost in all these thoughts, right? You're not a part of your thoughts anymore. So you're sort of like just pulling away and widening your attention, and you're noticing. This is what we call metacognition. It's on a higher level. So you know, oh, right now I'm frowning because I'm stressed. Oh, I'm having these negative thoughts. Oh, I'm behaving in a very unhelpful way that may impact my coworkers. Okay? And the more you practice, the more we're able to widen this attention even more. So now not only are we aware of ourselves, we are also aware of our external environments, our co-workers. We can see things from a bigger macro perspective. We can see the perspectives, the views of other people. And we know this stress or whatever that my colleague is saying right now, how is it impacting me? And however that I'm behaving and feeling now, how might it in turn impact other people? Okay, so when we practice mindfulness, these are the things that we become aware of suddenly. All right, so this is what we call metacognition in mindfulness. And this is a really, really helpful skill to have for everybody at the workplace because we work in a very complex environment. It's not just about ourselves. Mindfulness is not a selfish thing. right? We become aware of both ourselves and the role that we play in the external environment that we're in. Okay. So what is mindfulness? When we practice mindfulness, it's really simple. We just want to know what is happening as it is happening, not after. If you only notice that you're stressed after you're burnt out, then that is not being in the present, right? You must know as this stress is coming in, as I'm starting to get overwhelmed by thoughts, by negative emotions, when my heart is burning up, when I'm trembling all over, do I know? Am I aware of what's happening? Do I know my stress triggers? And do I know when I have to take a step back and when to take a pause? Okay, so with mindfulness practice, this is essentially what we're doing here. All right, I'd like to end off with a very short practice. Just now we practiced 1 minute, and now I'd like to invite you to practice 3 minutes with me. Now, the reason why I'm doing this practice is because this resource is readily available out there on the internet. You can just search 3-minute breathing space. You're going to get audio recordings, YouTube videos, and scripts. And you can easily practice this on your own or with your colleagues at the workplace. So if you are someone who is interested in employee wellness, employee engagement, and you want to use mindfulness to help them, this is a good starting point. It's a huge chunk, right? But this is a starting point to practice. Samuel, stress backwards is desserts, not all stress are bad. Thank you. That's very insightful. Wonderful. Okay, so let's practice 3 minutes of breathing space, and it's really simple. I just want to explain, I just want to put a visual in your head so you remember this practice. It's 3 minutes, and we're going to do 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, okay? So we talked about flexibility of attention just now, right? So we start off the first minute with a wide attention, okay? We follow the shape of the hourglass, which is one of the beautiful figures out there, okay? Hourglass, we start with a wide one. Second minute, we zoom into the breath, so we narrow the attention. So this is more focused. And then third minute, we widen attention again to the body. Okay, so wide, narrow, wide. This is the practice, right? So I'm going to stop screen share, and then I'm going to practice together with you. I'm going to lead you in the practice. Okay, so now, I hope all of you will join me, and I hope this will be helpful for you. So all you need to do is to sit on your chair. I don't recommend sitting all the way back because you get too relaxed and then you may fall asleep on me. So please sit up straight, okay? Sit up straight, and you want to make sure that your feet are planted flat on the floor for stability, okay? And all you need to do is to follow my guidance. You can close your eyes or you can lower your gaze down to the floor. All I ask is you don't stare at the screen. It's distracting, okay? So same thing, we're going to use the bell to signal the start and end of this 3-minute breathing space. So let's start by just becoming aware of what is here for you right now. So you might become aware of the presence of sounds around you. What about the presence of thoughts? What thoughts are present? Are there any emotions present at this moment? What about body sensations? Whatever that is present for you, we're just simply noticing. There is no need to change anything in this experience. And now when you're ready, I'd like to invite you now to bring your attention to the breath in the body. Just noticing where in the body do you best feel or sense the breath moving in and out. So you may notice the breath at the nose area, maybe movements of the breath at the shoulders, at the chest, or at the belly. So one breath at a time, just following the breath all the way in and all the way out, keeping the breath natural. And if the mind's attention wanders away to somewhere else, that's perfectly normal. All you need to do is to invite the attention back to the breath in the body once again. And now when you're ready, I'd like to invite you now to expand your attention from the breath to this entire body in this sitting posture. Becoming aware of the overall shape and size of this body, noticing the posture that the body has adopted, the air around the skin, the contact that the body is making with the chair, the feet on the floor, any other sensations that may be present in the body right now. Again, there is no need to change anything in this experience. We're just noticing the body for just the way it is. Okay, so now when you're ready, I'd like to invite you to take a deep breath in, breathing all the way in and breathing out completely. And allowing the eyes to completely open. Okay, so that was 3 minutes of stillness. You may not have been completely still, but if there were moments where you were still, then that's a very good start. Okay, so let me come back to the share screen. Okay, so I think I meant to keep at least 10 minutes for the Q&A, but I overran by 5, so I hope you don't mind. So maybe I can take some questions that you may have about mindfulness. Feel free to type it, in the Q&A or in the chat. So for Aventis, so I'm collaborating with Aventis to deliver some programs, counseling related programs. So my field of expertise is in mindfulness. So we do have a positive and positive psychology and mindfulness graduate diploma coming up, okay, and a series of other diplomas that are related to mental health as well, right? And if you are a HR practitioner and if you're interested in the area of employee wellness and mental well-being, mental health, which is really, really important for the workplace nowadays, then mindfulness has shown very strong research results. It is something that can be integrated easily into the workplace. So I hope this will be helpful for you. Okay. So Simon, learning to say no from too much work, does that help in my mindfulness? Okay, so yeah, so learning to say no is a strategy. I wouldn't call that mindfulness, but you can employ mindfulness. You can practice mindfulness as you say no, as you learn to say no. So a lot of us, and I used to be like that as well. When I was working, I was basically a yes person. I basically tend to overload myself. I can't say no to work. And this is the result of not being mindful of my own resources and my own state of mind and body. And that's how I ended up burning out. So being aware of your internal states is very important. Learning to say no as you say no, noticing what emotions are being invited in, noticing your thought patterns in you. For example, some of us have, very negative mindsets. We may think, oh, if I say no, then, I may get fired or something, or I may get ostracized, right? So knowing these negative thought patterns. So you can see mindfulness as a practice that underlines, every aspect of the workplace, whether it comes to decision making on the personal level or at the collective level, interactions with one another, taking care of yourself, being more effective, right? So mindfulness underlines that. How do you get people to take mindfulness more seriously instead of seeing it as just a yoga thing for girls? Yeah, that's a very good question, Jean. Thank you. I agree with you. Some people don't take mindfulness seriously, and I think it's also because they don't get a chance to see how beneficial it is. And the thing about mindfulness is that even though it has very, very strong research results, it has helped so many people, it is something that does take time. It is not a tool. I always use this analogy. It's not a tool. It's not like a hammer, right? When you're stressed, you just take out this hammer of mindfulness and you just hammer your stress down. It doesn't work like that. It is innately a skill of the mind. So you have to develop this skill. So what I find often helpful for people is to show them and tell them the research benefits. Tell them about the people that they respect and admire who may be practicing mindfulness. Explain why it's important. So explaining the rationale of why we're practicing mindfulness. So getting the buy-in first is really important. And also taking it slow. So we don't want to push people into practicing like 10 minutes at first. So 1 minute is actually a very good start, or even some informal mindfulness as you go about your day-to-day routines will be very helpful. Yeah. How do you introduce mindfulness to children? Very good question. Children are naturally, I would say, they may be very distracted nowadays, but they do tend to take to mindfulness more easily than adults because adults tend to be overcognitive. So for children, they are essentially more kinesthetic. They're more restless and active in nature. So you would want to introduce more kinesthetic practices with them. So for example, some teachers, they do yoga for kids and they incorporate mindfulness in. When I first got my nephew to practice a little bit of mindfulness, he was 4 years old then. He sat for 4 seconds. 4 seconds, and I was very proud of him, right? So if you can get them to do very, very short practices, open up their senses to the food that they eat, the things that they play, get them engaged with the 5 senses, I think that's a good way to introduce mindfulness to children. Thank you, Jean, for the question. Okay, any other questions that I could help with? Thank you. Okay, of course, if you have any further questions about mindfulness, feel free to get in touch with me. All right, you can just easily find me on LinkedIn. Kelvin, do we have time for another question?
Yeah, sure, we do.
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
How about older kids? Can mindfulness help in preparing them for exams? Yes, definitely. So I have conducted mindfulness programs for teens, for youth. It really helps them to cope with learning stress and anxiety as well. So if you can look for programs that teach them the coping skills, that will be very helpful. Yeah, Geraldine, thank you. Okay, so maybe if you have questions, you can take them offline separately with me. Just connect with me on LinkedIn or something. If you have questions about the diploma itself, feel free to approach Kelvin. All right. So right now, let me hand it back to Kelvin. Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. So if anyone has any questions, so I'll feel free to drop me an email. I think when you're registered for the webinar, you actually have my email address over there. Else you can just reach out to me. I think most of y'all who actually attended probably has been in contact with me before. So anyways, Erin, thank you so much for taking out the time to address. It's really interesting.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
All right. So I'll see you soon then. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.